Well, what's going on, everybody? This episode of the podcast is sponsored by 101 CBD, the makers of premium raw CBD oil products. Their chill tincture blend is perfect to help us relax and recharge for this new year 2020. And if you're like me, you're not old, but you're really not that young either, and sometimes our AGE starts to act up. The Alleviate Tincture is there to help us with inflammation, sore muscles, and joints that seem to mysteriously show up as we get a little older. And believe it or not, they've even got some raw CBD for our pets. Now, even though the holidays are over, you can still send a gift of some great products from 101 CBD to your friends and your family so they can be just as relaxed and pain-free as you are. Now, in case you didn't know, they have a great deal for all the In My Grow Show listeners. You can get 25% off of your order when you use coupon code IMGS25 at checkout. So go over to 101cbd.org and get yourself some raw CBD today. And also, let's talk a little bit about Delta Leaf Labs, because they have a couple of tools over there that can really help take the mystery out of growing cannabis. They have a plant DNA sex testing kit, which tells you whether you're growing a male or a female plant. They also have several different tests to see if your plant's going to be susceptible to certain funguses and diseases that can affect cannabis. Now, they make it really easy to take a sample from your plant. You send that sample back to the lab, and a few days after they get it, you'll know exactly what you've got to work with and whether that plant's really as healthy as it looks. And because you're a listener of this show, you can get 10% off of your order when you use coupon code IMGS10 at checkout. So go over to deltaleaflabs.com today and pick up your testing kits. All right, now let's start the show. Greetings, brothers and sisters, hermanos y hermanas, ladies and gentlemen, cats and kittens. This is the In My Grow Show, the podcast dedicated to taking the mystery out of cannabis. I'm your host, Alex, and this is show number 91, the first show of 2020. I hope everybody celebrated the new year getting really high and just hanging out with friends and family and just having a great, safe time. I hope nobody got busted by the man out there because he was looking for you. And I also hope that you set for yourself some big goals and some little goals. And remember that it's okay, man. It's okay if you didn't reach all of those goals that you set for yourself last year, In my opinion, you didn't fail as long as you were, taking steps towards the finished product, towards that finished goal, then you were doing all right, man. If you didn't get to the finish line with that goal, that's okay. Keep moving forward on it, man. Because I know, like, for me, I had set certain goals for the show. I had said that I was going to do some video shows, which I didn't do. I said I think I was going to do 2 or 3. I didn't do them, mostly because I recorded some, and I got to tell you, watching them, it was pretty boring. It was like just watching the evening news. It was me basically just looking at the camera, reading notes. I think I need to try. I'm not saying I'm not going to do video shows eventually in the future, but I think I'm going to try some kind of different way to do it. Because, me just reading it just wasn't very exciting to me. Now, I also said I was going to write a cookbook. I am still writing that cookbook. I'm about halfway through it. I've got about 8 or 9 recipes. I want to, a few more, like 8 or 9 more. I've got things like, my waffle recipe and a chicken salad recipe. But life got in the way. I couldn't complete it, but I'm still working on it. It will come out. I'm going to try this year. I haven't got a name for it yet, but it doesn't matter though. Like I was saying, as long as I'm moving forward, I'm okay with it. Now, what goals have I set for the show this year? Well, one of the main ones is that I'm going to try to balance the show's time a little better between like growing segments and segments about the industry. Because I noticed this past year I would go on these, 3 or 4 week cuts of like, just growing information, and then like 3 or 4 weeks of just like industry stuff. So I'm going to try to like balance it, maybe 1 week grow, 1 week industry. We'll see how that goes. I'm not saying it's always going to work out that way, because it just sometimes it doesn't. Life gets in the way. What can I say? Now, last week I meant to get a show out, but I was unable to. I usually record the show and put it out on Sundays. But last week, Saturday night, my daughter got really sick. Saturday night, Sunday morning, like emergency room sick. Sunday morning, we wound up in the emergency room. We thought she had appendicitis. She did not have appendicitis. She had something completely different. She had an ovarian cyst that burst. It was pretty gnarly. She was in pain for about 3 or 4 days, man. Poor kid. And it was just really rough to see. As a parent, you don't want to see your kid in pain. But she is doing a lot better. Completely 100% better. But that is why you did not hear from me last week. Now, completely switching topics, but kind of getting back to the growing part. You remember how I had those two, cherry wine hemp plants growing? I've got them in a little locker. They're not in a climate-controlled room, they're out on the back porch. It's an enclosed porch, but they're out there kind of, that's a pretty good spot for them when everything's running correctly. A couple of weeks ago, it got really cold around here up in Ojai. The snow level came down pretty low. It didn't snow on us, but, pretty close to us. And during that time, the grow cabinet lost power. So I figured that out, turned the power back on. But when it lost power, the heating mats that I have for the pots burnt out. And that's probably what made everything kind of switch off, what triggered the GFI, the breaker. And I didn't realize this. And it got really cold, and I had just watered the plants. So the root zone got really cold also. And the plants did not dig that at all, man. I didn't look in on them for about 3 days. When the temperature got really cold, it was just a busy season, just a holiday season, and blah, blah, blah. I can make all kinds of excuses, but whatever. Didn't pay attention to them for a few days. Didn't realize that happened. And yeah, like I said, they took some damage, man. One of them's looking okay. Looking pretty strong, pretty healthy. The other one, another one, a little bit smaller. They're both about maybe 2.5 feet tall. They're looking okay. They were looking robust. Now they're looking a little mad at me. Very mad at me. Anyways, the smaller one took a lot more damage, man. And, the root zone got really cold. Didn't freeze, but it did stay moist for a long time also. So I'm not sure if that smaller one's really going to make it. I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best. Got everything dialed in again. But yeah, that was a little bit of a tragedy, man. I really did feel bad for him. That cold out there. So we'll see how that turns out. All right, now one last thing I want to do before we get into the rest of the show is I'm going to do a birthday shout-out, something I rarely ever do. And this is going out to Kristen from SBVerde. It was her birthday a couple of weeks ago. Happy birthday, buddy. But I want to do it kind of like an old-school jam DJ does, with the cholos and all that. And this is going to go out to Kristen from her husband. All right, you ready? Here it goes. Let's see. You tell me how this sounds if I can be an old-school DJ. All right. All right, this birthday shout-out goes out to Kristen La Loca from her vato El Güero. Happy birthday, baby. You're my cutie pie. And right there, that song Cutie Pie from One Way would be playing in the background. Cutie pie, you're the reason why. All right, that's enough of that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that, Kristen. Happy birthday, buddy. All right, now let's move on to the strain of the week. Now, I got 2 different strain reviews here. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is somebody had given me a 5-pack of pre-rolled joints from Lowell Farms, and it was called the Comfort Indica, and they were a blend of the Super Glue and Josh D OG. Now, the package said it was 21% THC, but I got to tell you, I didn't feel like it was a 21%. I felt the 21% before, and that did not feel like it. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't. It just didn't feel like it to me. Now, I got to be honest, man, I really wasn't that impressed with them. And it's not because I'm not a fan of the pre-roll. I mean, I'm not a fan of the pre-roll. I went in there with total open mind. Hey, because, I like Lowell Farms. They put out okay product. I've had some of their good products. I'm like, all right, let's try these out. And somebody had given them to me, so I said, with even more of an open mind, let's try them out, right? But yeah, like I said, wasn't too impressed, man, both with the high or the flavor. The flavor was just really bland. It really wasn't anything to mention. I didn't really notice, any spectacular terpene or anything that stood out. So, and on top of all that, something else that really bugged me about these pre-rolls was that all 5 of them were runners. I mean, as soon as I lit them, they would start to run. And if you smoke joints, you know what I'm talking about. That's when one half of the joint burns and the other one just stays, solid and no burn. I don't know. I don't think I'm explaining it right. But anyways, you know what I'm talking about if you smoke joints. All 5 of them are runners. That really bugged me. I'm really glad somebody gave them to me and I didn't buy them. But if Lowell Farms is listening, you can go ahead and send me samples all you want and I'll review them. Honestly. I'll give you my honest answer. But now, the other thing I want to talk about, the other strain I want to talk about is the Mango Brulee. This, my friends, I like this flower. Now, the internet says it is a sativa-dominant cross of the Mango and Blue Dreams. And this flower straight out of the jar had this really fruity, sweet smell and taste. To me, it didn't really taste like mango. To me, it was more like a pineapple. But I loved it, man. It was really nice. I was so surprised when I took that first hit. I was really impressed. The high from the smoke was really good. It's not a heavy flower. It was an 18% THC. It was a great daytime smoke, really energetic, really kept me focused. And this was put together by the Monterey Kush Company. So good on them, man. Great flower. I really loved it. And I picked this up at the Hueneme Patient Collective down in Port Hueneme. Now, before I wrap up the strain of the week, I want to give a quick pot smoker's tip of the week. And this is about rehydrating your bud, because one thing I do realize, or I do see, is that, yes, while the first time if I go to the cannabis shop, I crack that jar open of flower, it's nice and moist. By the third or fourth time, that flower feels really dry, real crispy, to the point sometimes that when I break it up, it almost turns into dust, like it all just turns into unsmokable keef almost. And that's really annoying. Because all I want to do is just pack a nice fresh bowl and smoke it and enjoy it. I don't want to have to be there scraping up stuff, putting it in a bowl, and then hoping I don't suck it in. Anyways, the best way to rehydrate your weed, okay, I've used a few different ways. The best way that I can do it, because I do cultivate and I usually have, at least one plant growing, I'll just tear off one of the leaves and throw it in the jar or throw it in the bag. And, within a few hours, it'll bring that nice suppleness, that nice stickiness back to the weed. It won't be as hard and crisp. It'll be easier to break up and actually smoke and, push into your bowl or roll it up in a joint, Some other things I've used in the past, I have used orange peels before. That works okay, but it can sometimes give a little bit of a citrus flavor to your weed. Not a lot. It's not like it's really letting off a bunch of terpenes, but it might. Something else that I've used is a raw tortilla. Yep, a tortilla, the kind you get from the store. Yeah. So what I'll usually do is I'll quarter them. They look like pizza slices maybe even a little smaller than that, and I'll throw a whole piece in the bag or in the jar. And then after I throw it in the bag or the jar, I'll put it in the fridge. But I'm not going to leave it in there for days because there is a lot of moisture on that raw tortilla. And if I leave it in there too long, that tortilla will start to sweat and give off condensation, and little water drops will form inside the bag or inside the jar. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. You do not want water droplets inside with your weed because, yes, it can create fungus and then just ruin your weed. I also don't want it too rehydrated, too moist, because then it's just hard to smoke and I got to re-dry it again, and it's just it affects it, and plus it's a high ruiner, man. Nobody wants that. So just keep an eye on it with the tortilla if that's the way you're going to go. One thing I do not suggest you do is to moisten a cotton ball or a little cotton swab and throw it in there with your weed, because the same thing, it is going to cause water droplets to form, and then it's going to cause just all kinds of issues and fungus. And that's what you don't want, so don't do that. You don't want actual water. And that, my friends, is the strain of the week. Now, since it is 2020, I want to talk about a couple of things that I'd like to see happen with cannabis. One of them, obviously, for me, is that cannabis gets rescheduled federally here in America, so that it is no longer a Schedule I drug. That would be awesome. I'm hoping that's going to happen. I doubt it, but I'm hoping that'll happen. Another thing legally that I would want to see, that I'd like to, that I think I should start campaigning for, is to get our right to grow, to make that into a constitutional amendment. That way, our right to actually be able to grow our own cannabis, to grow our own hemp, to grow our own medicine, to grow our own escape, to grow our own drug, to grow this plant that is good for us and we love to party with it. That way, no administration, no president, no state official can threaten to take that away from us. They can't say, oh, you better behave or I'm going to take away cannabis from you. Fuck that. That's what I want. I'd like a constitutional amendment to where we have the right to grow as adults. 20 plants each. Yep, 20 plants each as an adult. So that's what I'd like to see. Come on, who's with me? 20 plants. We'll start at 20. That way, yeah, man, right? You start high, right? That way you get talked down to 6, something rational. Come on, be rational, Alex. No, 20 plants. Anyways, I think I'm getting off track here. But yeah, that's what I'd like to see, is a constitutional amendment for growing cannabis. What do you think? That's a great platform, man. Come on. Could we get it done by 2020? By like election? Because, the election's coming up in November. Maybe. I don't know if I have that kind of time, though. All right, if you have that kind of time and you need some help getting the word out, you let me know. Now, the last thing I'd like to see in this year for cannabis is I'd like to see more cannabis consumption lounges near me. Okay, because, they are out here in California, but from where I'm at, they're an hour and a half away in either direction, either going north or going south. Now, I don't mind going to a different town and playing tourist, especially to a consumption lounge. Yeah, let's go check it out. And, I don't mind doing that. But if it's an hour and a half away, I don't see that happening very often or at all. Because you're talking about a 3-hour round trip. I don't have that kind of time. And plus, I'd like to have a place near me where I can just call up some friends and say, hey, I'll meet you there, whatever, at 9 o'clock or in 30 minutes or whatever. That would be great. If it's an hour and a half away, now suddenly I've got to plan my dinner. Something, right? You got to do, I don't know. But yeah, that's all I want. I don't know if you're in control of that. If you're in control of that, yeah, just one near me, near Ojai, even in Ventura County. Come on, just a consumption lounges. How many microbrews are they? Plenty, too many. All I need is one consumption lounge. Why don't I open it? I'd love to. Tell you what, you get me the cash, and I'll open that consumption lounge. How about that? You be the money, I'll be the brains. Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Come on, let's do it. Let's open it up. Anyways, but that's what I'd like to see in 2020 for cannabis. Now let's move on to what's going on with my social media. Now, all of these events are pretty local for the 805 area code here in California, but if you have a cannabis event that you want to tell the community about, the audience about, reach out to me, send me an email in mygrow@gmail.com, and we'll work something out, man. We'll get that event on the air somehow. All right, but first let's start with my buddy Dr. Jake Felice will be giving a presentation about the endocannabinoid system on January 13th at the Sespe Creek Collective, which is in beautiful Ojai up here. You can find them at 408 Bryant Circle, Suite C. And I believe it's going to be very similar to the endocannabinoid system presentation that he gave at the Ojai Herbal Symposium. But either way, if you have the time, go over there, check it out. It's really informative, especially if you're not really clear about how the endocannabinoid system works. Dr. Felice really does a great job about breaking it down for you. The other thing I want to mention is Arroyo Verde Farms, which is a cannabis cultivation farm out in Carpinteria, California. They are having a community day tour, and it's happening Saturday, January 18th. They have 2 different tours that day. You can pick up your free tickets. I know I did. I went over to their Instagram account, which is at Arroyo Verde Farms. And you can also find out more details about what the community day tours are. But that does look like a lot of fun. If you've ever been curious about what a cannabis cultivation operation looks like, a legal one, get your tickets, go on out there, check it out, ask questions. For sure, if you're going to go and you're not, you're totally new to this thing, write down your questions beforehand and, find somebody you can talk to and ask them about it. Because that's really the best way to educate yourself about how this happens or what's going on is to ask them directly, instead of just, repeating what somebody else has told you. So yeah, make it a point. Go out there, find them, and go to this community day tour. I'm going to be there that Saturday. I think my tour time's at 10 o'clock. And I even think I have an extra ticket. I haven't decided who's going with me, actually. I don't know if it's extra. I just haven't decided who's going with me that day. And the last thing I want to mention is the quarterly cannabis workshop and networking event that is happening January 8th, Wednesday. That is this Wednesday at the Car Winery at 414 North Sal Si Puedes in Santa Barbara. The topics that are going to be discussed are social entrepreneurs, how compliance testing legitimizes the industry, and federal cannabis legislation. There is a link in the show notes for ticket information, so check that out. And that's all I've got in my social media. So now let's take a look at what's going on in the report from the Cannabis Frontline. And the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that LG, the company that makes, phones and TVs and refrigerators, they're coming out with a full-size indoor grow cabinet. It looks a lot like a refrigerator. It's probably as big as a refrigerator. And it's just a trip to see how the industry is moving. I'm going to read from an article that I found over at CNET, and it's titled LG's Herb Fridge is a Full-Size Indoor Farm, and it was put together by Molly Price. It says the built-in column-style refrigerator uses light, temperature, and water control to create the best environment for gardening in your kitchen. A non-circulating water supply system distributes the right amount of water for each plant type and prevents algae growth. Flexible modules replicate the best outdoor conditions by matching the temperatures in the cabinet with the time of day. There are LED lights, forced air circulation, and wick-based water management systems. The fridge will work with a line of all-in-one seed packages and with monitoring apps to keep watch over your garden from anywhere. Manage settings and gives you gardening tips along the way. Ooh, sounds like we're just going to set it and forget it, huh? So, while that all sounds really cool, a couple of questions. Well, a couple of observations, not really questions. How long do you think it's going to really take somebody to start growing pot in there? Not very long. Another thing, well, I mean, just as, how long is it going to take them to figure out how to make one of these all-in-one grow packages? And the other thing is, it looks good for veg, but flowering might be a little tricky because there's glass on the door. So, you could set your timers for flowering in there, and I guess, black out the glass on the door somehow, some construction paper or something, I don't know. And the only thing that I see that's missing is they should have a little dryer with it too, so you can dry your weed. That'd be awesome. Then that'd be all in one. And I wonder, so it's supposed to, moisture control, it's supposed to control, algae or fungus growing? Yeah, I wonder how good that's going to be. Let me know if you buy one. Let me know how that goes, especially if you start growing pot in it. I'd really love to see that thing in action. But there you go, man. A nice stainless steel LG grow cabinet for your kitchen. That way you can show it off at parties. Shit, I'd be impressed. Now, something else I want to talk about that's going on the front line is, okay, so how a couple of weeks ago the president signed a bunch of spending bills into law. And a lot of new cannabis stuff got stripped away by the time it got to the president's desk, but there were a couple of riders in there of things that, that have been there since 2014, as far as what the federal government's going to, spend their money on and what it isn't. And one of those things that it's not supposed to spend their money on is, enforcing federal law in the states where they have legal cannabis industries. And the president signed the spending bill, but made it a point to tell everybody that just because he signed it doesn't mean that he doesn't have the power to just override it and, run roughshod with the federal government into these states. That's basically the feeling that he gave. That's not what he said, but that's the feeling that he kind of implied. Which kind of tripped me out because it's almost like this guy has this really childlike mentality of being told what to do as president. Like the law, even though it's written in the law, doesn't care. He can do whatever he wants. It just seems pretty childish and seemed kind of funny when he brought it up, all like, I can still do whatever I want, fuck you. Okay, alright, easy there, buddy. Calm down. I don't know, it was just a weird thing, kind of a temper tantrum thing for the president. Well, I guess not that weird for this president, but anyways, moving along. Alright, and the last headline I wanted to read comes from Reuters, and it's titled, Italian Court Rules Homegrowing Cannabis is Legal, Reigniting Dispute. It starts off, Italy's Supreme Court has ruled that small-scale domestic cultivation of cannabis is legal in a landmark decision, triggering calls for further legalization from weed advocates and anger from the country's conservatives. Called on to clarify previous conflicting interpretations of the law, the Court of Cassations decreed that the crime of growing narcotic drugs should exclude small amounts grown domestically for the exclusive use of the grower. The ruling was made on December 19th, but went unnoticed until last Thursday when it was reported by domestic news agencies and immediately fueled a simmering political debate over cannabis use in Italy. The court has opened the way. Now it is up to us, said Matteo Montero, a senator from the co-ruling Five Star Movement. But the opposition leader of the right-wing League Party, Matteo Salvini, a lot of Matteos out there in politics. Anyways, that guy said, drugs cause harm, forget about growing them or buying them in shops. In reference to the shops selling low-strength legal weed that are widespread in Italy. So I guess they do have legal weed in Italy just low strength. And when I mean low strength, as far as like what's legal, I think out there it said something like 0.6 THC. That is considered legal weed. That's what they're arguing about. 0.6 THC. Can you imagine that? That's basically hemp. You're not really getting high. At least I'm not really getting high. But yeah, it looks like the Italian court said you can grow for your own use out there as long as you're a citizen. So Italians, go ahead, man, grow away. Just as long as it's not tested, I guess. Because anything higher than 0.6, you may get jammed up. All right, now staying on the topic of the cannabis front line, I want to talk about some of the big stories that were out about cannabis last year in 2019. And there were a few of them. You know, one of the bigger ones was, of course, the vaping crisis. You know, people were fucking getting sick everywhere. Like 50 people died. You know, a lot of states went through and just banned a whole bunch of different formulation for e-cigarettes. It got really crazy. It's still getting crazy. It still has not really completely died down. You know, the industry took quite a hit. But you know what the good thing about all that was, or at least the one silver lining that came out about that, is that it really did push this conversation about legal regulated products and the black market, and really did a side-by-side comparison of the pros and cons. You know, it really did push this conversation about how taxation, or about how high taxation is a barrier to enter the legal market, and how high taxation also helps the black market thrive. So that was a huge story last year. It's still a huge story. The other big story that happened last year was Phylos Bioscience. For those of you who aren't aware, Phylos is a cannabis testing company. You know, they had different, genetic tests for your plants. They had this whole, the Phylos Galaxy where you could put up the results of your strain. And then early last year, they came out and said they're going to start their own breeding project. You know, it's not just that they said they were going to start their own breeding project, but, video came out of them at, I believe it was an investor conference, where they were talking about how this was Phylos' intention the whole time to do this, was to start their own breeding project, was to amass information about different strains, different cultivars, and then build from that their own breeding project. And that's what it seemed like the CEO was saying in those videos, this guy Mowgli Holmes. So then that was a big deal, man. Everybody in the cultivation industry just got, blown back by this. Because up until then, Phylos was truly a well-trusted company. And after that came out, everybody just said, well, there goes big business again. So yeah, that was a big story. Still kind of a big story, still going on. There's still details being ironed out. Another big story that started to come out towards the end of last year was this whole movement to legalize hallucinogenics, psilocybin, ayahuasca, MDMA, all these things, to just make them legal and to be able to be used therapeutically. So that's a real trip also to see, man, is that it's really interesting just to see how once cannabis started to get a foothold of being acknowledged as medicine, all these other things that were seen as illegal, all these natural plants that were seen as illegal and dangerous started to get another look at. And a whole push of this natural way to deal with ailments of the modern society with plants just seemed to take over. It's awesome. I mean, I like it. I'm definitely going to vote for legalization of hallucinogenics for adult use or for therapeutic use. That's awesome. And the last thing that really took me by surprise this year was how popular hemp, CBD, and even more popular cannabis became, and how much easier we're talking about the subjects of all of these things, not just here in America, not just in states where it's legal, but in states where prohibition still stands, and in other countries and across different cultures, man. Because I know this holiday season, I spoke about it a lot to older people in my family. These family members, aunts, uncles, who, when I was growing up, were really against drug use, really against marijuana use, and now they're touting, I use CBD, or I use cannabis oil for this ailment or this other thing. I was really surprised, and I'm really surprised at where it's at. And and the conversation is just going to get more broader from here. The more things we learn, the more ways we actually research it, not just for medical, but also just to help us relax, how to help us celebrate. It's all great in my opinion. And those are just some of the really big stories that stood out to me last year, 2019, about cannabis. Or not just about cannabis, because there's legalized hallucinogenics in there also. But let's just say stories about expanding our minds or our consciousness. Yeah, there you go. Stories about expanding our consciousness. I love it. Anyways, I think I got too wordy with that. Well, buddy, check it out, man. That's the end of my notes. That's all I have to share with you today, this first episode of 2020. Now, once again, I want to thank all the artists who let me use their music to put this show together. And I also want to give a big thank you to DJ Monster Drop, who's been helping me with some of the social media side of the show. Thank you, brother. I appreciate all your work. Now, if you have a question or a comment about this episode or about cannabis, or if you have an idea about what would be a good topic for the show, do me a favor. Send me an email, that is inmygrow@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram and the Cannabis app at InMyGrowShow. And as always, if this episode has educated you, entertained you, or even given you a little escape from your day, do me a favor, go over to patreon.com/InMyGrowShow and leave a financial donation. Now, if you'd rather buy a t-shirt in support of the show, you can go over to inmygrow.com, click on the Support the Show tab, and you can buy a nice t-shirt there. Or before you go shopping at Amazon, click on the Amazon link at the top of the show notes in this episode, because that just lets them know that we sent you and the show gets a commission. Now, if you can't support the show financially, don't worry about it. I get it. Here's how you can help, though. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Subscribe to the website, inmygrow.com. And then go over to YouTube, search for the In My Grow Show with Alex, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And after you do all that subscribing, there's the dog, just tell 3 other people about the show. Really simple, really easy. Now, also, if you are a cannabis company that wants to advertise to our worldwide audience, send an email to inmygrow@gmail.com, and we'll figure out the details. All right, man, so I'm going to get on out of here. I love you all very much. And remember to always grow, learn, and teach.